Joseph,
Yes.
when was the last time you went to a drag queen story hour?
Never.
You have not?
Never.
Oh, fascinating.
I'm intolerant, I suppose.
Well, back on August 28th, up in Roanoke, Texas. Where is that? It's north of Fort Worth. You wouldn't expect to see this in that kind of city, but they had a drag queen story hour, I guess, or a drag queen show for kids or for family. It was a family-friendly event. Right? About 20 children and multiple self-proclaimed teachers attended the event where drag queens performed and collected dollar bills. Sounds like a strip club.
From children.
Yeah, from children.
Don't you have to have an SOB license for that?
You would think, or something, right? Anyhow, Antifa showed up to provide security. Mm-hmm. I wonder if they were invited.
I don't have any clue.
So anyway, they showed up there and they had their AR-15s, which I thought was fascinating. Right. So
Second Amendment.
Well, I know that I know the Second Amendment is there, but I'm curious if you think that maybe this violates the Texas Penal Code when you're holding the weapon the way some of these guys were holding them. Not all of them, but some of them. So so these guys were with their weapons, and I think at least one of them, if not two of them, were in violation of Section 4201, disorderly conduct of the Texas Penal Code.
Okay.
I want to have a conversation about this. But specifically, it's going to be 4201A, and I think it's number 8, displays a firearm or other deadly weapon in a public place in a manner calculated to alarm. Okay. The video I'm referring to specifically, you can find on Twitter, would be like these three gentlemen here.
We'll paste it right in there.
Okay. So these three gentlemen here is a photo on Twitter, are actually holding assault weapons in 3 different fashions. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, the one on the right, I think, violates the disorderly conduct statute.
Because he has crazy eyes.
But that one on the far left, he had crazy eyes. Figured him to make the first move.
Well, no, because the way he's holding the weapon, he's
I thought we were doing...
He's indexing his finger.
Josie Wales.
He's practically... he's holding it like he's prepared to fire. And then the guy in the middle of this one only has his right hand on the weapon. He's not indexing his finger across the trigger or across the trigger guard. And I think you could argue that is not to calculate or to cause alarm, right? Mm-hmm. And then the guy on the left clearly is just standing there with a rifle and is not holding it in a fashion that I think would cause alarm, because he's not looking like he's prepared to discharge the firearm. And there's no one around these people that would indicate a necessity to discharge a firearm. So, and even this gentleman here, who has both his hands resting across the weapon. Okay. I can live with that. That's not going to be disorderly conduct. But when you look like you're going to use that weapon to engage, like you are preparing to engage a target with that weapon, which is exactly what that looks like. He hasn't raised the weapon. If he raises the weapon, it becomes a second-degree felony, ag assault with a deadly weapon. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Deadly conduct.
But there's something between there's something between the Second Amendment right to bear arms and the second-degree felony ag assault with a deadly weapon. Somewhere in between is disorderly conduct. I want to explore when it becomes disorderly conduct, because I think that's something that police officers really need to figure out, because this is going to happen more and more often. And like we saw in Dallas, right, where 5 Dallas police officers were killed, that guy walked up holding a rifle. Mm-hmm. And everyone was like, okay, well, can we engage him? Can we not? When is it being done to cause an alarm? And we need to confront this guy and, contain him, kettle him, or whatever it is, whatever method you want to use. Because it's not a great distance between this and raising that weapon to fire it.
No, it's not.
just, okay. Mm-hmm. And so reaction beats reaction. And I don't want police officers to be on the backside of reaction. So if you've got somebody who's carrying a weapon, they're out in the open. We've had active shooters before. We've had mass shootings before. We know what they look like. We know how they occur. We can stay on the front side of the reaction versus reaction without violating the Second Amendment when it becomes disorderly conduct, right? That's why I think disorderly conduct exists, so that if you see someone who's holding their weapon in a fashion that would allow them to quickly start engaging and become an active shooter, that's the time to intercede. That's the time to act.
Okay.
All right. And that's what I think this guy looks like right here.
Yeah, in the middle,
Okay.
as you see on the screen here.
And I mean, I'm not sure about this guy on the far, far right. I mean, you might be able to argue that too is calculated to create an alarm. Like they want to project like they're in charge.
Yes.
They have command presence. Well, that's not what.
Well, that's why they wore the black.
yeah. Well, that's not Antifa's role.
I know that, and to me, all of them wearing black causes alarm.
Right.
Okay, so
Now, let's take a look at something. I believe, my personal humble opinion, carrying your weapon, you're not trying to alarm anyone. You know, this is fine. This, okay, fine. I can understand it. This, you know, everybody has, you know, everybody's seen the lazy soldier look, right? The lazy infantryman, where you're tired and you're, okay, I get it. This looks like you're about to engage someone. This is presenting a weapon to cause alarm.
okay,
In a calculated fashion to cause alarm, because it's not a large distance or a long distance to go from here to here. Okay? Whereas opposed, if you're like this and you do this and then you got to come up, that adds, you know, that's one extra step that could indicate to, say, a police officer that you're about to engage a target or you're about to engage the police officer, right?
sure,
But if you allow people to take, and this is what I call a preparatory stance, right? If you allow people to walk around in large groups of people in a preparatory stance for shooting with a rifle like this, you're just inviting trouble. It's not long before they decide to just raise the weapon and start shooting for whatever reason, or start shooting the police, because that's exactly what happened in Dallas, right? Because we had 5 police officers killed in Dallas by a guy carrying a weapon into a large parade of people, and no one stopped him because of the Second Amendment. And I get the Second. I'm a huge Second Amendment supporter. I believe it. This is the Second Amendment right here. You know, this is the Second Amendment. You know, right here. You got your weapon. It's not, you know, you're not presenting it. You're not pointing it. You don't look like you're about to prepare for a gunfight. But when you swing that weapon around at, you know, at modified port arms, you've got your finger indexing the trigger, you've got your hand on the front stock. That's all it takes, and you become an active shooter.
okay,
And so I think that's why disorderly conduct exists, so that the police will at least have the opportunity, when someone looks like they are thinking about becoming an active shooter, they can stop them. And it's a misdemeanor. It's, you know, it's not a felony. It's a misdemeanor arrest. So this whole idea that you would have to worry about civil rights lawsuits, well, that's why the misdemeanor was invented. So you don't have to go through that whole civil rights calculus. You see what I'm saying?
yes,
So that's the problem I have with the way we're perceiving the Second Amendment and the relationship between the Second Amendment and people carrying their firearms in public places, and ignoring Section 4201 of the Texas Penal Code. I just think it's bad calculus. It really is. And so I understand what your argument is, you know, with the AR-15. My point is, if the Second Amendment is supposed to be universal, it simply isn't. Time, place, and manner considerations do exist for a reason. If somebody ever stood on a sidewalk like that in downtown Houston
They have. I've been there.
Of course, we're not, the way we react to that situation is going to be different than, say, if they're standing on the sidewalk in front of my kid's elementary school. They're going to die.
Yeah, it's historical. I mean, that's what we call...
Even though the Second Amendment applies to the sidewalk in front of an elementary school, the same as a sidewalk in downtown Houston.
Certainly.
Time, place, and manner considerations and experience in what we've dealt with previously. If somebody were to stand on a sidewalk in front of an elementary school holding an AR-15, they would die. And I would applaud it because that's just profoundly stupid.
Especially now.
And designed to cause alarm. So
I wouldn't even carry my camera tripod into a school zone now. You're going to get shot.
I mean, I don't think it's wise to kind of ignore... I don't think it's wise to ignore 4201 of the Texas Penal Code. I just don't, because I think it's allowing us as a society to allow other people to act indecently. And there's no real call for public decency anymore, because people, don't feel compelled to act decently anymore to each other.
I understand.
And I think these Antifa...
Well, they're not going to act decently towards you.
Here's the thing. So they're there for security. Imagine if somebody had walked up wanting to shoot up the place. Do you think those idiots would have been able to stop them?
Maybe.
No, they'd have been shot. They'd have been shot first, and the rest would have run.
I don't know. Perhaps.
Nevertheless.
Well,
I don't believe that. I don't believe
all
that.
life lessons can be learned from Star Trek.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Captain.
What did Captain Kirk say to the Yangs?
These words and the words that follow were not written only for the Yangs, but for the Coms as well.
The Coms.
They must apply to everyone, or they mean nothing. Do you understand?
So it applies to everybody, or it's good for no one.
I get it.
It applies to everyone. And as much as I hate those Antifa dipshits, as much as they piss me off just standing, and I've been face to face with them in Atlanta, okay? They have the same rights that we do. They and it's got to apply to them. It's got to. And it sucks being the good guy. Because we got rules we got to go by. And I would much, much rather live in a dangerous freedom than a peaceful slavery. And that is a dangerous freedom you got right there. You're right, it is dangerous. But they didn't shoot the place up. Okay, that's the kind of my key point. And if you take action against them, are we not like taking action against, like, say, banning all assault rifles because somebody might do something?
Well, no,
somebody could do something. That's
not what I'm saying. I'm suggesting to you that somebody was doing something. Not that they could be doing something, but that they were violating 4201 of the Texas Penal Code. They were, some of them, not all of them. Some of them were violating or committing disorderly conduct. Clearly.
Well,
in that picture, I think
I don't see it. I don't see it as disorderly conduct because they weren't doing it. They weren't holding the weapon in a way to calculate it to cause alarm.
I think that's exactly what they were doing. I think that's exactly what they expected.
That's why they put on the black clothes and they put a mask on,
and then
because they want to cause alarm. But just because you do something like that doesn't mean you should arrest people like that.
Oh,
I mean, and where does it stop?
Because that's the problem they're not de-escalating, they're escalating the situation like we've talked about before. Antifa has no desire whatsoever to de-escalate their tactics. They're putting snipers and like in that story, you find out that they had snipers on the top of the parking garage. Why? They had, people littered all over downtown holding assault rifles in a manner calculated to cause alarm. With indexing their trigger finger over their trigger guard. I mean,
well, to me, that's just carrying it safely.
Okay.
It is. I mean, and to me, that looks, what I see when I see that guy holding that weapon like that is, if he's the bad guy, you're mine. Okay. Easy pickings. Okay. Because that's not how I hold my weapon as a police officer. Okay. I hold it in a low ready. Okay. That would cause alarm. And as a police officer, that's how I carry my weapon when I'm approaching a scene like that. Or if I'm approaching that scene and he's got his hand on his weapon like that, like I have in real life, got off my bicycle, and there's some guys, or 4 guys, they sent us to right there by Bayou Place, Capitol and whatever runs on the back of that. Anyway, there's 4 guys had rifles. And as I'm riding up, they're looking at me. They turned. One of them actually had his hand on was indexed like that. And so I was looking, but I already had a plan to which one to shoot first. And they looked at me and I said, hey, well, it worked. They said, what? I said, your plan to get them to call the police. Because here I am. I said, so I talked to them for a few minutes, shook their hand, and they were like, are you going to do an investigation? I said, I already did. When I was riding up here, I did the investigation and you weren't doing anything wrong. Okay, you were holding a gun in the state of Texas, and it's the same thing for a guy who's carrying a pistol open carry, right? He's carrying a pistol open carry. It's just a second away.
So then what would 42
from taking that weapon out and start? It's just a second away. But I think we have to go with intent. And this also, if you look at one of the things we say in the active shooter school, totality of circumstances. Okay, the totality of circumstances was 5 guys in Antifa gear with rifles. Nobody's running, nobody's panicked. Okay, the totality of the circumstance. They weren't causing any alarm. And the police can't be alarmed. It's got to be the public that is alarmed. We cannot be alarmed. And the public was clearly not alarmed because they were standing there. To me, I think, like I say, it's not a slippery slope. It's a sheer cliff that we'll jump right off of. And the left will take it and pervert it into just a way to get a gun. If they ever see a gun, somebody will be alarmed and they'll start taking them.
Fair enough. I get it.
Okay.
But I can't help but think we're inviting a future disaster by ignoring minor violations of the law. You invite larger violations of the law.
Well, I don't think it's a violation.
And I think that's what Rudy Giuliani.
What about the patriot groups that do that when they have a Second Amendment rally, and 50% 60% of the people are armed with rifles?
Okay, and I understand we've discussed this earlier, but I've only been to maybe 3 or 4 of these patriot rallies, and I've never seen anyone indexing their finger across a trigger guard while holding an AR-15 in a low ready position or at a port arms position, looking like they're in search of a fight. I've been to a few patriot rallies and I've never seen that stance holding an AR-15.
I mean, I have. I've been to ones here in Texas and in Georgia, and there were people all over the place holding their weapons like that. And to me, it just shows, and holding your weapon indexed is now this way to look cool. Okay, because that's what they do on Medal of Honor, and the video games is
like Battlefield 4.
The characters the characters index their finger like you're supposed to.
Right.
Okay. They emulate that. Plus, I saw the other day a picture from Iran, and they had their fingers all indexed on the side of their weapons. I mean, we taught them that.
All right, fair. I get it. I kind of apply the Giuliani principle that he would talk about when he was mayor of New York, that if you ignore the small crimes, you're inviting the big ones. And I just think that if we keep letting Antifa do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want, unchecked, because we're all worried about a lawsuit or whatever, then you're inviting them to commit bigger and bigger crimes, and then they wind up, I don't know, burning down your city like they did in 2020.